Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar presented in conjunction with our behavioural research team here at Morningstar. Our session today is From Stress to Security, how clients and advisors can foster financial wellness. And it's being presented by senior behavioural researcher Samantha Lamas and behavioural scientist Dr. Danielle Labotka, both dialing in from Chicago tonight. My name is Brett Cullen, Advice Solutions Manager in New South Wales, and I'll be your host for this session. Here today, the team will be unpacking a piece of behavioural research that delves into some of the complexity around financial wellness, emphasising that it is not just about what is in the client's bank account, but also about how they feel about their current and future finances. And on that note, let me introduce you to today's presenters, Samantha Lamas and Dr. Danielle Labotka from Morningstar's Behavioural Insights team. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As mentioned, my name is Samantha Lamas. I'm joined by Dr. Danielle Labotka, and today we're talking to you about how clients and advisors can foster financial wellness. Now, fostering financial wellness is important because it can help clients make that shift from stress to security, help investors not only be better about their finances, but actually feel better about their finances. So as we get started, let's tackle the elephant in the room, maybe while you're all here today, which is that even high net worth clients like those that you work with can still struggle with their finances, that even they can still feel financially unwell. I'm sure you all have a client or two who's constantly stressed about their finances, even though they have plenty of assets, they're not going to run out of money. You still feel like you're forcing them to actually spend down their savings, or clients who are on paper financially well off. They have assets, they have income, etc., but their behaviors get them in trouble and push them towards financial stress. They can still struggle with actually following through on their plan or following through on actions that you two set out together. In these cases, these investors may be objectively financially well, as in they have enough income and assets to be talking to you, but they could be subjectively unwell. And we'll dig into the terminology here in a couple slides, actually. But it's this factor of subjective financial wellness that could be wreaking havoc on their financial lives. So in our research, we looked at this relationship between the different factors of financial wellness, both objective and subjective, and people's behaviors, with the goal being to understand how we can move the needle on financial wellness through the means of our behaviors. So to do that, we started by gathering a sample of higher income households. They averaged about 350K in investable assets. Then we measured their subjective and objective financial wellness. Then we homed in on a foundational positive financial behavior. Some would say it's personal finance rule number one, which is to have a fully funded emergency savings account. Now, remember, we're dealing with higher income households. These people are well off. They have enough so saving for an emergency is not overly burdensome. Before we start digging into the data, I want to get your ideas of what's going to happen here. So, of this higher income sample, what percentage of participants do you think have a fully funded emergency savings account? You'll see a poll pop up on your screen. So go ahead and select the percentage that you think it's going to be. I'll wait a couple seconds. Here are results. 23%. Okay, a pessimistic bunch. Um, you guys were pretty close actually. So here's the answer. 41%. So not quite as bad as you guys thought, but still not great. 41% of households in our sample had a fully funded emergency savings. And remember, these are higher income households. To make matters worse, we had a pretty low bar as to what constitutes a fully funded emergency savings. So in our study, what constituted a fully funded emergency savings was that a person had 3 months worth of savings, and those savings made up half of their income. We made the very kind assumption that people's expenses only make up half of their income. So pretty low bar. Even so, only 41% of our sample hit this bar. It would probably be closer to the number you all guessed if we had a more stringent criteria here. To add fuel to the fire, when we looked at those who hadn't saved enough in their accounts, most people weren't even close. So here we're seeing the distribution of participants who do not have a fully funded account. On the x-axis, we have the count of people. On the y-axis, we have the progress to a fully funded account. As you can see, most people aren't even close. Moreover, that huge bar there, 26% had zero emergency savings at all. And again, these are higher income households, and yet they're not complying with personal finance rule number one. At this point, you may be wondering, how is it that these people have enough funds, but they're not actually saving? They're not complying with personal finance rule number one. And this is because there's more to the puzzle of what drives behavior. Yes, these individuals have the opportunity to save, presumably, because they have the income to do so. But opportunity alone is not enough, as I'm sure you've experienced with your clients. And here's where our psychology and our motivation really comes into play. Here's where financial wellness comes into play. Now, before we dig into this relationship between wellness and behaviors, let's get on the same page as to what constitutes financial wellness. Because as it turns out, this is actually a very complex topic, and plenty of research has been done on this concept. What the literature comes down to at a high level is that financial wellness is both subjective and objective. On the objective side, this is our ability to meet our current and future financial needs. So, from a dollars and cents perspective, can we fund our lifestyle now and into the future? Here's where metrics like income and investable assets come into play. However, financial wellness is also subjective. It's how we feel about our finances, whether we feel financially secure, whether we feel like we could actually enjoy our lives regardless of our finances. It's really a combination of these two things, which is why you can have a person with higher income, with plenty of investable assets, who will never run out of money, and yet this person still feels financially unwell. And that's because they've only focused on one side of this equation, only that objective side. When we look at the drivers of financial wellness, we see that it's driven by elements of both of these factors. So here's a short list of what research notes drives financial wellness. As you can see, some of these items are kind of hard for us to control, hard for us to budge. So things like our social and economic environments, our personality and attitudes, the decision context that we're in. However, other items we do have some control over. So things like our knowledge, our skills, even our income to some extent. Although we've established that income isn't the problem for our sample here. Now, the one factor of particular interest to this conversation is behaviors. Going back to the point of this conversation, we want to help people improve their financial wellness. Existing research finds this connection between wellness and behaviors. So, although some models posit that behaviors lead to financial wellness, they're a precursor to financial wellness, we think this relationship is actually more complex. In fact, we think it's bi-directional, with the two interacting and feeding back into each other. And by promoting one, we can promote the other. So this idea is fairly intuitive. I'm sure you've all heard of the term debt snowballing. It's a technique in debt management which says that one should pay off the smallest debt first. This is contrary to what one should do objectively, right? From a dollars and cents perspective, you should probably pay off the highest interest rate debt first. But the idea behind debt snowballing is that once you pay off one debt, you have the stamina, the encouragement, that feeling of accomplishment and motivation to pay off another debt. So in this way, this positive feeling rolls over, compels future good financial behaviors, which then promotes future good financial or positive emotions, and then we're in a snowball. It just keeps going from there. Using the language we just spoke about, encouraging good financial behaviors can then increase a person's subjective financial wellness, how they feel about their finances. And then the cycle repeats from there. And we do see some evidence of this in our data. So when looking at our sample, we find that the likelihood of having a fully funded emergency savings was linked to both objective and subjective financial wellness, and that those who felt dissatisfied with their finances were less likely to have good emergency savings behavior. And this effect was larger when a person had lower amounts of investable assets. So again, it came down to a combination of these two factors of both objective and subjective financial wellness. Although we can't pinpoint the exact directionality here, so whether low financial wellness discourages savings or vice versa or a combination, It's clear that there's something to this relationship, which might give us a clue into how we can both improve our financial wellness, in particular our subjective financial wellness, and positive behaviors through the means of encouraging both by moving the needle on each side of this relationship. With that, now let's get into how you could actually do that. And for that, I'll pass it off to Danielle.
Right. So, as Sam has mentioned, subjective financial wellness carries a lot of importance when you're working with your clients because it not only is an outcome that your clients will appreciate, that feeling of security and comfort, but also because it can have that feedback relationship with their financial behaviors. The better that they feel, the more they do right, and on and on and on it goes. Because of this, a natural question to ask is how should advisors foster their clients' subjective financial wellness? Well, it starts pretty simply with monitoring it in the first place. There's a saying, what gets measured gets managed. If you don't have an understanding of where your clients are at with their financial wellness, then you don't really know what you're working with. You don't know how they're doing, what their sore points are, and so on. So when you measure your client's subjective wellness, you get several benefits. For one, you can begin to track their progress. Now, ideally, working with a financial advisor will improve someone's financial wellness. So, by periodically checking in with your clients on their wellness, you can begin to document their growth. This can be beneficial not only for demonstrating your value to your clients, but also for providing your clients the opportunity to reflect on what changes have been beneficial for them. This, in turn, may give them the confidence to enact even more good financial behaviors. The flip side of this is that monitoring your client's financial wellness can also help you identify problems while they're in their infancy. Think of it like cancer screening. The sooner that we catch the problem, the easier and more effective treatment is. If a client has traditionally had a steady or increasing sense of financial wellness, and now they are suddenly reporting not feeling so great about this stuff, this gives you an opportunity to kickstart a conversation with them to help them identify what has changed for the worse. In a similar vein, monitoring your client's subjective financial wellness allows you to have conversations with them about what the next step is. Perhaps they finally have mastered their spending issue, but now it's time to work on building that saving habit. By monitoring your client's financial wellness, you can show them how commitment to good behaviors has paid off. This, in turn, can give you leverage to encourage your clients to keep building new habits in other areas, as you have shown them the evidence of how doing this kind of good behavior can benefit both their mental state and their finances. So, if you want to monitor your client's financial wellness, you can start doing so by using a tool that we've developed with our Rockstar partners at Morningstar Wealth in Australia. Now, it's a quick 6 question survey that will give your clients a sense for how they are doing with regards to their subjective financial wellness. To develop this tool, we drew on research on measuring financial wellness, which finds that there tends to be two major components to it: expected future financial security and current money management stress. So let's talk a little bit more about what both of these components entail. So when we talk about expected future financial security, we're talking about what your clients think is going to happen to their finances in the future. Are they going to be secure or are they not so certain? Again, remember that what we're talking about right now is that subjective side of financial wellness. So even if you look at your client's numbers and you see that they clearly will be secure until the end of their life, what we're interested in learning about in this situation is how they feel. Does that match up or not so much? So we provide clients 3 statements about their expected future financial security, and then they just rate their agreement with each one. And they're very simple. I'm securing my financial future. I will achieve the financial goals I have set for myself, and I will be financially secure until the end of my life. So you can see what we're tapping into here is what they think their finances will look like in the future and whether they're secure. Now, when we talk about current money management stress, We mean, how do your clients feel about their finances today, right? Pretty simple. This is intended to capture not only do they feel like their current finances are on track, but also whether they're kind of negatively preoccupied by their finances. Again, here it's important to keep in mind that perception is reality. So even if you think that your client has nothing to worry about or that they have enough financial freedom to live as they please, it doesn't really matter if they don't agree with you. So again, we provide clients 3 statements about their current money management stress, and they're going to rate their agreement for each one. These are: my finances control my life. Whenever I feel I'm in control of my finances, something happens that sets me back, and I'm unable to enjoy life because I obsess too much about money. So you can see here that we're tapping into whether your client feels on track and in control of their finances and not the other way around. So at the end, your clients are going to get a score that corresponds to one of 3 categories: finding your footing, on your way, and feeling grounded. But we also wanted to provide some food for thought for your clients. So this can be the beginning of the conversation and not just the end. So regardless of which category they fall into, they're going to get a little feedback from us. It's just 3 paragraphs that all fall into the same general pattern. So first, we provide a little background for them on what their financial wellness says about their current situation. Then, in the next paragraph, we provide some questions for your clients to ask themselves for how they can improve. And these are really targeted at helping them identify if they're more worried about the future or the present when it comes to their finances, kind of giving them a target to approach. And then finally, we give them a suggestion for what kind of next step they can take based on their score and self reflection. Now, you can have your clients do this on their own or in the office with you, but we encourage you, regardless of how you do this, that you do ask your clients what they learned from the exercise. What category did they land in? What did they think were some of their sore points, or what were their strengths that they felt they had? By ensuring you bring this back into your conversation with clients, you can learn more about their headspace and what you can do to improve it. And that brings us back to the root question: what can I do to foster my clients' financial wellness? Well, recall that behavior and financial wellness interact with one another. So, when you're looking to help your clients improve their subjective financial wellness, we recommend taking steps to address both sides of this equation. Here we have some suggestions to address both that subjective wellness and those positive financial behaviors. Now, one of our big recommendations is to make the uncertain aspects of their financial future more tangible and knowable for clients. This is working with addressing that future financial security issue. Often we may know that we want to do something like save for an emergency or invest strategically for retirement, but we may not know what the actual end point looks like. And that can make us feel insecure. You might have a lot of clients out there who are wondering, how much money do I actually need in my super to live my current lifestyle in retirement? So this is why you want to sit down with your clients and help them put numbers down on the paper so you can help them kind of combat this insecurity. You will be making sure that your clients have well articulated and tangible goals, and that can help them have more confidence in their ability to achieve them. Our next recommendation is to help your clients change their attitudes towards their finances. This is really working on addressing the issue of their current money management stress. In particular, it's important to foster your clients' sense of self-efficacy, which is their confidence in their ability to manage their finances, right? So think about engaging in the financial planning process from the perspective of a client, right? This can be kind of overwhelming. There's all these forms and numbers and options that they have to sort through. So, you as an advisor can help improve your client's self efficacy by basically providing digest versions of those important forms, options, etc., that are tailored to your client's financial literacy. That is, you want to take the time to develop takeaways that highlight key points, numbers, issues, and so on, so your clients can feel confident that they understand what they need to know in this moment. In doing so, you're helping them develop their confidence in their finances. And our last suggestion is to encourage follow through by planning. This is geared towards addressing the positive financial behavior side of the equation. We know not just from behavioral science, but also from our everyday experiences that it's all too easy to fail to follow through doing something, even if we want to do it. Think of how many times you thought to yourself, man, I really want to go to the gym tomorrow. I want to get a good workout in. It's going to make me feel a lot better. And then tomorrow comes and we don't do it, right? Luckily, we know from research that planning can be a powerful tool to help us close the gap between our intentions and our actions. So if you want to help your client to work on a habit, then you can help them by sitting them down and helping them lay out the steps they'll need to take and discuss how they may overcome problems they'll encounter along the way. So by helping your clients create a detailed plan, you can encourage these good behaviors that will benefit them financially and mentally. So remember that financial wellness is complex. It is more than just the money your clients have in the bank. It's also about how they feel. How do they feel about their current finances and how do they feel about their future finances? And critically, how a client feels about their finances can affect their commitment to good financial behaviors and vice versa. As such, advisors can bolster their clients by attending to their subjective financial wellness. It will not only provide you a sense for how your client is doing and where they're going, but it can also give you the opportunity to improve both the mental and financial outcomes for your clients. So if you'd like to see more about this paper and the resources we've covered today, please visit our Behavioral Finance Hub, where you can find this in addition to a whole library of our research reports and tools for advisors. Now, before we head into Q&A, we would like to invite you all to join our Behavioral Insights Advisor Research Panel. As you can see from our data here, we often collect data from clients and investors, and this panel allows us an opportunity to collect data from advisors like you to understand how you think about things, how your clients are handling issues, what sticking points you have, and so on. This will help us be able to develop better tools and advice that are applicable to you and your practice. So if you join, we will invite you to participate in no more than 2 surveys a year. And participation in any survey is always voluntary. However, if you do participate, you'll receive early access to our results as a thank you. Some of you here today may have actually participated in our inaugural survey. And if so, know that we really appreciate you contributing to our research, and we will be sending out the early access results soon. So with that said, let's hop into the Q&A.
Well, thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Danielle. So we've had a couple of questions come through. One thing that has been brought up, I guess, is first question, how have you seen other advisors using the wellness checkup? And associated with that, does the advisor get access to the client answers, or is it something they need to discuss in person?
Yes, so currently the tool is just set up such that they can fill it out. So you would have to discuss it with them directly.
Yes, and the gauge itself is new, so you all have first access to the actual tool. However, we have seen other advisors measure financial wellness in some shape, way, or form. And the way we see it being used is really this diagnosing and feedback element that Danielle kind of walked us through already. It's diagnosing where your client needs help, where you might be able to move the needle on certain aspects. And then also that feedback aspect of knowing if you're doing a good job. As part of an advisor, you shouldn't just be focusing on their finances, it's also their peace of mind, how they feel about their finances. You would hope to be moving the needle there. If not, that could lead to dissatisfaction in the advisor-client relationship, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Next, a little bit of a deeper question, I guess. So do we have any, do you have behavioural science evidence on clients' wellness satisfaction dependent on their level of emergency cash levels? So for example, say you have 41% sufficient cash reserve levels. Does that mean they see themselves as having healthy financial wellness? This advisor uses an example that 98% of their clients have 3 to 4 months of spending. in cash reserves. That isn't accessed unless they have an emergency in their cash flow. The other 2% have chosen they don't want cash reserves because they want to be more aggressive in their investment plan. So I guess the question is the correlation there between that 41% that you've seen in studies?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Go ahead.
interesting because when we look at this research that Sam brought to us today, we asked people, are you satisfied with your finances? We were tapping into that. And what we found is that a lot of people who were not fully funded did feel satisfied with their finances. They were content with the way things were going. In fact, our largest group were people who had lower assets, didn't have a fully funded emergency account, and were happy with their finances. So, I think that it can be quite individual, but also sometimes it can be a matter of education. Sometimes people may not realize that, they have a lot going for them with their finances, but they may be neglecting other areas. And that's why we talk about, with the gauge that it's good to reflect on what you're doing well, but also to consider areas where you might be neglecting your financial health.
Next, have you got any practical tips or action steps for an advisor that they can do with a client to help them articulate or face their own behaviour? So prospect clients exhibit anxiety, but they seem to have a resistance to engage in professional advice and doing DIY, which sometimes creates more issues for the client. What can an advisor do to help them see the issue and encourage action?
You could always try to flip the script almost. Like, for example, say you have a loved one that's going through this decision, what advice would you give them? That could help them get out of their heads a little bit more. You could help them try to broaden their perspective. Like, say they come with an idea of making this trade, give me 3 reasons with 3 resources that say this is a bad idea, for example. We do see that a lot of investors are seeing advisors as someone to bounce ideas off of, especially these DIY investors. So maybe if you respond with questions instead of trying to tell them what the right thing is to do, that could be a way of engaging in a helpful conversation. That being said, some investors may not be a good fit for you, and you should be cognizant of that.
Thank you. And I think that'll bring today's webinar to a close. Just as we've mentioned earlier throughout the webinar, the resources and the recording will be made available post this session and be sent out to everyone with the CPD points within the next 2 weeks. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of our team across the country in the Morningstar team. Thank you.
Any advice in this video is general advice prepared by Morningstar without reference to your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider the advice in light of these matters and any relevant product disclosure statement before making any decision to invest.